I've been driving trucks for nearly 15 years, crisscrossing highways under endless skies, hauling freight from one corner of the country to another. The road is my home, grit under my nails, diesel in my veins, and the hum of the engine as my lullaby. Most nights, it's just me, the asphalt, and the static of the radio. But there are moments, rare and sharp, that remind you the world isn't as empty as it seems. This is one of those stories, and it's not the kind you shake off with a strong cup of coffee. It started on a late autumn evening, the kind where the air bites your knuckles and the horizon bleeds orange. I was hauling a load of industrial parts from a warehouse in Ohio to a distribution center in Nebraska. The route was familiar. Interstate 80, straight and monotonous, cutting through fields and small towns that blur together after a while. I'd driven it 100 times, knew every rest stop, every greasy diner, every speed trap. But that night something felt off. The air was heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I'd been on the road for about 6 hours, the sun long gone, when I pulled into a rest stop just past Des Moines. It was one of those bare-bones spots. 2 pumps, a flickering neon sign, and a diner that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the Reagan administration. I needed fuel, a stretch, and maybe a burger to keep me going. The lot was nearly empty. Just a couple of sedans and a beat-up pickup parked crookedly near the edge. I maneuvered my rig to the pump, killed the engine, and stepped out into the chill. The first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not the usual quiet of a rest stop at 2 a.m., but a suffocating kind of silence, like the world had been vacuum sealed. No crickets, no distant hum of traffic. Nothing. It made the hairs on my neck prickle, but I chalked it up to fatigue. Long hauls mess with your head sometimes. Too many hours staring at the same stretch of road. Too many energy drinks. I shook it off and headed toward the diner. Inside, the place was as grim as I expected. Faded linoleum, a jukebox that probably hadn't worked in decades, and a waitress who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I ordered a coffee and a burger, sat at the counter, and tried to ignore the uneasy feeling gnawing at me. That's when I saw her. A woman, maybe late 20s, sitting in a booth near the back. She was alone, hunched over a cup of coffee, her hands wrapped around it like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her hair was messy, her jacket torn at the sleeve, and her eyes, they were wide, darting, like she was waiting for something to jump out of the shadows. I'm not the nosy type. Truckers learn early to mind their own business. But something about her stuck with me. Maybe it was the way she kept glancing at the door, or the way her fingers trembled when she lifted her cup. I told myself it wasn't my problem, paid for my meal, and headed back to my rig. That's when I saw it. A black SUV parked near the edge of the lot. Lights off, engine running. It hadn't been there when I pulled in. 2 guys sat inside, faces hidden in the dark, just watching. Not moving, not talking, just watching. I climbed into my cab, locked the doors, and tried to focus on the road ahead. But as I pulled out of the lot, I caught a glimpse of the woman leaving the diner, her head down, moving fast. The SUV's headlights flicked on, and it rolled out after her, slow and deliberate, like a predator stalking prey. My gut twisted. I've seen enough in my years on the road to know when something's wrong, and this was wrong. I told myself to let it go. I had a schedule to keep, a load to deliver. But as I merged onto the highway, I couldn't shake the image of her face, scared, alone. I kept my eyes on the rear view, half expecting to see that SUV again. Sure enough, about 10 miles down the road, there it was, tailing me at a distance. Not close enough to be obvious, but close enough to make my skin crawl. I turned up the radio, tried to focus on the static, but my mind was racing. Who was she? Why were they following her? And why did I feel like I was already in too deep. I pulled into the next rest stop, a bigger one with a truck plaza and more lights. The SUV didn't follow, but I wasn't taking chances. I checked my mirrors, locked the cab again, and grabbed the tire iron I keep under the seat. Call it paranoia, but I've learned to trust my instincts. The plaza was busier, trucks idling, a few drivers milling around, swapping stories over cigarettes. I scanned the lot for the woman, or the SUV, but saw neither. Still, the weight in my chest didn't lift. I decided to call it a night, or at least try to. I climbed into the sleeper compartment, pulled the curtains, and lay there, staring at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak of the rig, every gust of wind, sounded like footsteps. Around 4 a.m., I heard it. A faint tap on the driver's side window. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed the tire iron and peered through the curtain. Nothing. Just darkness and the faint glow of the plaza lights. But when I checked the side mirror, I saw it. A shadow moving near the back of my trailer, too quick to make out. I didn't sleep after that. I sat up, tire iron in hand, watching the mirrors until dawn broke. When I finally climbed out to check the rig, I found something that made my blood run cold. A small, folded piece of paper tucked under the wiper blade. It was a receipt from the diner, but scrawled across it in shaky handwriting were 2 words: "Help me." The receipt sat on my dashboard as I pulled out of the truck plaza, the words "help me" burning into my brain. I kept telling myself to toss it, to forget the whole thing. I'm a trucker, not a hero. But every time I glanced at it, I saw her face. Those wide, terrified eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stumbled into something bigger than me, something I wasn't supposed to see. The road stretched out, gray and endless, as I tried to piece it together. The woman, the SUV, the way those guys were watching her, it all screamed trouble. Human trafficking? A stalker? A deal gone wrong? My mind churned through possibilities, each worse than the last. I've heard stories from other drivers. Shady deals at rest stops. People disappearing into the night. The highway's a lawless place sometimes. A no man's land where bad things slip through the cracks. I decided to keep my eyes open. If the SUV showed up again, I'd call it in. I had a CB radio and a phone, and I wasn't above ratting out whoever was tailing her. But as the miles ticked by, the SUV didn't reappear. The receipt, though, stayed where it was. A silent accusation. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Around noon, I stopped at a diner in North Platte. A busy spot with a mix of truckers and locals. I needed coffee and a chance to think. The place was loud, plates clattering, voices overlapping. A stark contrast to the eerie quiet of the night before. I sat at the counter, the receipt in my pocket now, and ordered a sandwich. That's when I overheard it. A couple of drivers at a nearby table, talking low. "You hear about that girl they found off 80 last month?" one of them said, his voice rough from years of smoke. "Cops said she was running from something. Found her in a ditch, beat up bad." The other guy shook his head. "Yeah, 3rd one this year. They're saying it's some kind of ring. Girls go missing, turn up dead, or not at all. Cops don't do shit about it." My stomach turned. I kept my eyes on my coffee, but my ears were locked on their conversation. They didn't say much more, just grumbled about the police and moved on to talk about fuel prices. But it was enough to make my skin crawl. Was that woman one of them? Was she running from the same people? I left the diner and checked my rig, paranoia creeping in again. No notes, no shadows, no SUV. But the feeling of being watched hadn't gone away. I hit the road again, my mind racing. I kept replaying the night before. The woman's trembling hands, the SUV's headlights, the shadow by my trailer. I started wondering if I'd missed something, some clue that could have told me what was going on. That evening, I pulled into a truck stop near Ogallala. It was bigger, busier, with rows of rigs and a convenience store that never closed. I figured I'd be safer here, surrounded by people. But as I parked, I noticed something odd. A familiar pickup truck. The same beat-up one from the first rest stop, parked near the fuel pumps. It could have been a coincidence, but my gut said otherwise. I stayed in the cab, watching. The pickup didn't move, but I could see someone inside. A guy in a baseball cap, his face shadowed. He wasn't fueling up, wasn't getting out, just sitting there. My heart started pounding again. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, ready to report it. But then, I hesitated. What would I say? I saw a guy in a truck. I found a note. It sounded crazy, even to me. Instead, I called a buddy of mine, Joe, another driver who'd been on the road longer than me. I told him everything. The woman, the SUV, the receipt, the pickup. He listened quietly, then said, "Man, you need to be careful." I've heard stories like this. People get mixed up in shit they don't understand, and next thing you know, they're gone. If you think she's in trouble, call the cops. But don't play detective. He was right, but I couldn't let it go. I decided to do one last thing before calling it a night. I walked into the convenience store, bought a soda, and casually asked the clerk if he'd seen a woman matching her description. He shrugged, said he saw dozens of people every day. But as I turned to leave, he added, "There was a girl here last night. Looked real scared. Kept asking about bus schedules, but she didn't have any money. Left in a hurry when some guy came in." My blood ran cold. "What guy?" I asked. "Dunno," he said. "Big dude. Baseball cap. Didn't say much." I thanked him and walked back to my rig, my mind spinning. The pickup was still there, the guy still inside. I climbed into my cab, locked the doors, and sat there, tire iron in hand. I didn't sleep. I kept my eyes on the pickup, waiting for it to move. It didn't. Not until just before dawn, when it pulled out of the lot and disappeared onto the highway. I delivered my load in Nebraska the next day, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd failed her. I never saw the woman again. Never saw the SUV or the pickup after that. I turned the receipt over to the cops, told them everything. They took my statement, said they'd look into it, but I could tell they didn't expect to find anything. The highways are too big, too empty, too full of ghosts that aren't really ghosts. Just people who slip through the cracks. I still drive the same routes, still see the same rest stops and diners. But now, every time I pull into a lot, I scan for black SUVs, for scared faces, for notes under my wiper. I don't know what happened to her, but I know I'll never forget her eyes. And I know, deep down, that the road isn't just a road. It's a place where things hide, waiting for the right moment to show themselves.